Good afternoon.
Afternoon. We will be starting in a few minutes. Thanks for joining, actually earlier than the time, everyone. We normally start a minute or two after the hour just to give people a chance to join in.
Excellent.
I'm just starting to unmute people so you can actually talk after we've done our introduction, everyone.
Good.
Okay. If you want to, everyone want to put themselves on mute for the moment. Thank you for those that have joined already. We will get started in a few minutes, just waiting for a few more attendees. I am starting to unmute everyone ready to be able to talk in this session. So if you can just leave yourself muted for the moment until we've done the introductions. Thanks.
Hello.
Hi, I'm just putting everyone on mute for the moment. We are going to start with a round of introductions first before we start the conversation. So if you do find you go unmuted, if you can just put yourself on mute and we will get started in a couple of minutes. And welcome everyone. Chris, I see you have a question. You've put your hand up. Hello.
Sorry, Samantha, you're very, very, very quiet. I can hardly hear you.
It's okay.
I'm
It's
at
probably
full volume.
Can you hear me now? Maybe it's my headset because I haven't put it close to my mouth. Is this a little bit better?
Yeah,
Okay.
You are very, very far away, but hopefully the other speakers will be fine.
I'm in the UK, so it depends on where you're based right now. But hopefully I will speak a little bit louder. I'm just entering everyone into the meeting, and we're going to get started in a few minutes.
Excellent.
But I will.
Thank you.
That's okay. No worries.
Totally fine for me, Sam. Like
Okay.
always.
I was getting concerned. I was going to have to shout, Andreas.
No, well, not for me. It sounds pretty normal, like always. So
Okay.
I don't know.
If any of us you can't hear, just obviously let me know. We can speak a little bit louder, and we are recording this session, and I will edit it to send out to everyone once that's done. So no problem. Okay, without further ado, let's get started. So thank you everyone for attending today's session. It's an RC Experts. Some of you have definitely been on similar sessions before, so hopefully you'll find this one useful. This is going to focus on DWP Catalog workflow. I will introduce the team shortly, but just to go through a little bit of legal information. Now we are sharing these recordings. They were recommended and are approved now. We've just asked if you don't want your name to be mentioned, if you can change your title into the meeting. Otherwise, we will be sharing this out on YouTube and some other social media platforms. So just familiarize yourself with this notice. It is a little bit long. And while you're reading this, I'm going to just introduce the team and myself. So firstly, my name is Samantha Amond. I work as a program manager in the Centre of Excellence. So a lot of the work that I do is self-solve content. So you'll find how-to videos that we put on YouTube, communities posts, webinars, similar to this type of session, but this is a format of an Ask the Expert session. And I work across all of the products. So if there is any content or any type of sessions you would like that you'd feel would be useful, then please reach out to me. But without further ado, let me introduce you to my host. Over to you, Hugh.
Hi, my name is Hugh Fairfield. I'm a principal software architect for BMC. I work with a lot of customers on some of their catalog issues and help them out trying to get them up and running. And I'm active on communities, so I do regular blog posts on best practices and innovative ways to build workflows. So hopefully we can get some of your questions and help you guys out.
Thank you, Hugh. If we can go to Harishi next.
Yeah, hello, my name is Rishi Dhruv. I am in the SEAL team as a principal software developer. I mostly look into the digital workplace, catalog, innovation studio, and also business workflow and line of businesses. So yeah, looking forward to talk to you all today. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, Harishi, did you have something else to say?
Oh, no, I was just asking John to go next. So yeah.
Okay, thank you. John?
Hey everyone, my name is John. I'm a solution engineering architect and I've been working with BMC for about 11 years now. I was mainly on the DWP ITSM side, and more recently, in the last 2 years, I've been focusing on BMC's containerization journey.
Okay, thanks, John. And then over finally to Edgar.
Hi, I'm Edgar Arismendi, technical support analyst here in BMC, attending some Helix cases. Okay. Glad to be here.
Okay. Thank you, Edgar. Okay, so Hugh, I understand we had a couple of questions that came in before the event on the community post. I think that would be a good starting point before we move to the Q&A section of Zoom. I don't know if you want to get started with those. And just as a recap for the audience that have joined today, in Zoom, there is the Q&A section. If you have any questions around Catalog that you want responded to, if you want to put them into the Q&A, once we've gone through the questions that have previously been sent to us, we will move over to the Q&A. Plus, you can also use the hand sign, raise your hand, and we'll unlock you and mute you so you can talk to us. So if we can go over to that first, Hugh.
Yeah, let me get the question up. So I don't see Jason on right now. So let's go to Ahmed's question. Just give me a sec.
So do you want me to take Ahmed's question?
Yes, please.
Yeah. So Ahmed's question is around how we could more or less leverage Remedy's email engine service and like anything else really in catalog workflow, you really need to understand how Remedy does it first. So typically what you do is you would the way I tend to approach any workflow design in the Remedy space is I'd simulate it. I'd log into whatever Remedy application, and I would, in this case, I would attempt to create an entry into a Remedy form, which in the background triggers a Remedy workflow, which will eventually wind up reaching out to the Remedy email engine service and ultimately like sending the email and the template that's associated with that email. So fortunately, when it comes to this particular use case, there's really only one main form involved. And if I'm going to try sharing my screen. Hopefully this works because I just got a new laptop, so I may need your help here, Hugh. So if I click on share, open system preferences. No, it's not sharing for me. So I'll just tell you the name of the form. So the name of the form is the NTE process control form. And so once, as I said, a record is created in that form, then the email engine will kick in. But to actually create the record in the form, you need a combination of two workflow actions. So the main one obviously is create entry, but you cannot use create entry on its own. It has to be used in combination with a build input set. And the build input set is simply a way of collecting fields, their values, so that you can then pass them on to the subsequent action. In this case, it's create entry. And then once that create entry is done in the process form, then Remedy pretty much like takes over in the background and uses whatever template that you've defined to ultimately send the email. Okay. So I hope that's hope Atman's on and he's happy with that response. Otherwise, let me know and maybe we can elaborate a bit more.
I can't actually see him on, but we can follow up when we do the Q&A, John. Does anyone else have any questions around that topic before we move to Jason's? I believe we've got one of his colleagues on. So is there any questions further to that question from Vodafone?
I just put in the documentation link for the create entry, so that should help if there's any technical questions on that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I think, Hugh, we can move to Jason's question because I saw you responded to Jason's colleague, Chris.
Yeah. So Chris, the idea that, so I chatted with him and he's talked about the, I mentioned it, HRSM as being a potential solution and appreciate that moving to that would require to get HR to move to that entire solution. So it's a bit of a bigger move than you guys would probably want to get into. But one thing that is possible that could be relevant for you guys is I'm just going to share my screen here. I recently did a blog post. Can you see my screen?
I can't now.
Not showing at the moment, Hugh. I know with Zoom, you often have to share a particular window or application. It should pop up.
I think there's a setting in Mac somewhere though that I was trying to use, but I couldn't. You have to allow it in Mac.
Yeah.
Yeah, for Zoom.
Oh, and I've got to quit and reopen. That might be what the problem you were having.
Yeah.
Okay, I apologize for that. So anyways, I did share the link for it in the screen or in the chat window. So the idea with this, with the workflow that I just shared is it's a very straightforward, it basically, what it does is it just basically loops through all the questions and answers, and then it looks for any question and answer that has a tag with a very specific format for it, where it would be, for example, whether you want to create an incident or if you want to create a work order. And then the next thing would be the template type, the template name that you would provide, and then the potentially the summary that you want to use for that work order or incident. So the idea that I had for you guys is, I know that you kind of said, okay, well, you're onboarding a question, then or sorry, onboarding a user, and then what does that user need to be onboarded. So the idea with this service that I had for you guys would be, you could make it so that it's a very straightforward, you don't have to go in and like edit the workflow. It's very configurable. You can, if you want to add, let's say the example would be, you have a question you have a question, and then you make it say, do I want to, do you need a laptop ordered? And then you say, yes or no. And then you specify for that question in the tags that it would create a work order. It would be order a new laptop. And then the potentially the summary of that work order that you would create. And then another question that you could potentially ask is, do you need a phone, or like those sorts of things. So that would very easily give you a way to automatically, like to create this sort of workflow, or you don't even need to create the workflow. You just edit the questionnaire based on what questions you would be asking that new hire, and then and then you've kind of got it from there, and you don't have to create a bundle for it or anything like that. Like, you can just go in, create a questionnaire. The other nice thing too is that the workflow that's included, it'll take all the questions that are there and then put them into the notes field for all the work orders or incidents that get created. So it gives you a really easy way of creating a service that uses multiple work orders without having to, create a bunch of different workflows and all this sort of stuff. It's very reusable. You could, the really nice thing about the way Catalog is done is that you can, create one workflow and associate multiple questionnaires, multiple services to it. So you can have, this potential workflow could be reused multiple times. So it's a really great way of building a technology and making, or building a workflow and having it configurable versus having to go through and I'm creating a service, I've got to go in and create a workflow, and what does that workflow need to do, and all this sort of stuff. Whereas like this gives you the ability to go in and just come up with your questions and what needs to be asked, and figure out what work orders you have and or incidents you need to create, and it just does what it needs to do. Does that kind of
Yeah, that looks really useful. Thanks for that. I mean, there's a lot on there, but I'll definitely read through it later. One of the obvious questions, I guess, that may or may not be a problem is when we're onboarding, we've not got the new user's account details to kind of use to create the additional work orders for. So I'm assuming that you can do that in some way. You can use a variable or something for the additional work orders, because you don't yet know what the login ID is going to be until it's created.
So that's definitely something. So I mean, I guess that would be the one question would be is, how do you actually create that login ID? Is it created in would it be created in Active Directory? And then is it then, propagated out to all your other systems, or is it created in, some main repository and then it gets pushed down? Is there a way you can do that in an automated fashion?
Yeah, ideally that's what we'd like to do, get it created in AD and spawn it from there. But at the moment, I think it's fairly manual. The login ID is entered onto the initial user request work orders. So there is a place where it's stored and created. So my thinking is, I'm not sure how you'd then go from that to, creating additional work orders for that new user which hadn't been created at the time of the ticket creation.
Do you have Active Directory on-prem, or is it in
It's on-prem, yeah.
On-prem, okay. Because a couple of potential ideas. You could potentially, so one of the questions that you can have would be, what's the login ID? And then from there, there's ways. I'm just going to check and see if it's possible from the, I don't believe that you can create a user from the Active Directory connector. I think you can, but if you have a web, like a REST call that you could make to create, you could potentially, there's in Catalog, there's a REST connector. And then, so you can create that way. And then the other piece too is that you could create the user in Remedy. So you could create it in Active Directory via the REST connector potentially, or some other technology that you can figure out. And you can have using the REST connect, the Remedy connector, you can then create the user in Remedy, and then there you've got your your work order that you can assign to.
Okay.
Yeah.
The
other neat thing that that kind of the HRSM does that you could potentially do as well, is that there's the external portal, external user portal. Are you familiar with that?
Not, no.
So what that does is it gives the ability for users to be able to sign in without being a proper, without being an internal user or going through an SSO or anything like that. So what you can even do is, if you have the external user portal configured, you could, all that it does is it creates, you create users that are assigned to a specific company. And you could call that company, for example, new hire. And then you create the user in the new hire company. They can actually log into into the digital workplace portal. They can do tasks. You can create requests, all those sorts of things. And then before they're actually created in Active Directory. So that's actually
right. I would say, yeah,
that would actually be another potential really good solution, because then you can actually you've got that user. You don't have to worry about him being created in Active Directory yet because there's a lot of other stuff that happens there. But they can then, once they're, there, you can actually, they can, do onboarding tasks. They can ask, okay, well, what kind of laptop do you want? What kind of, all those sorts of things.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. That's interesting. I'll look into that. Just one other sort of follow-up question to that is, so you're asking for a laptop and things like that, and even access to specific services. There's a way to record that, isn't there? Can you do that kind of with a relationship with the user account? So offboarding is then kind of almost the reverse in some.
Yeah, because I guess it would be, so if you're saying if you went with the external portal sort of concept. Yeah. So I mean, what it could be is when you create that, that new hire, it could be something like, that person's name _temp, and basically all that is it creates, you ask them all these questions about, okay, well, what services are you going to need access to? Do you need a laptop? All those sorts of things. And, those would then be recorded in, using that, there's a way of getting all the questions into the notes field, and then that creates a work order. And then from there, those work orders could be, when you're creating the Active Directory, or when you create, like you're doing all that stuff, you could have access to that information so that it would be at least there to say, okay, well, this guy's getting set up. What does he need access to, I don't know, Visio? Does he need, like all these applications and services and everything like that. So that's one thing that could potentially work for you guys.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thanks for that. Yeah. There's a lot of info there. So thanks. Yeah. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so I think we've got a couple of questions that have been answered by the team. Hugh, I don't know if you want to go with the ones that are opened at the moment. I think John's just answering Vutran's question, then we can go into the ones that have been answered. I don't know if you can see that in the chat. John, did you want to answer that, or do you want assistance from Hugh?
So for Vutran's question, it's quite vague. I could see that. Is Vutran still on?
Yes, I've just unmuted.
Maybe if Vutran could elaborate on exactly what they want to do, would help.
Okay, Vutran, can you hear us? I've just pressed the unmute. Hopefully you'll be able to talk. John, I'm not sure. Sometimes people have a few problems trying to unmute, so I think we'll give it a few minutes.
It does sound like a specific use case that Vutran is asked to do, and there's quite a number of steps involved. So ideally, like any workflow design or service design, you need to break it down into pieces, and then think it through, and then go about putting your workflow and your questionnaire together. In this case, it sounds like you want to bundle services together. So obviously you need to approach one at a time.
And also too, the other possibility as well is you can think about it. I mean, it's a question of how you want to break down the work as well, right? Like when you think about you're coming in and you're saying, you've done the initial analysis, and like you shared that with us. And then you kind of want to think, okay, well, how do I want to actually implement this service? Do I want to, have separate services that execute separate workflows? Well, what are those workflows going to do? Are they going to, just create a work order? Well, if they're just creating a work order, what's the sort of additional benefit of segregating it out as a separate work, a service? Like, could you do something like the item that I shared before, where you're just basically it's almost like a work order / incident engine, right? Where it's basically everything that you create, or like everything is designed so that it's very much based on what questions get answered, they will then generate work orders based on that. So you can, even though it is a separate, you're asking access to a service, you could say, okay, well, in this scenario, it's I'm looking at it, it's like e-banking service. So, the idea here would be, okay, do you want access to the e-banking service? Yes, no. And then you add the tags for, creating a work order, it would have a certain work order template, and then the summary associated to that work order. And then from there, all you do is you say, when the user's requesting it, they say, do you want e-banking service? Yes. And then, who are the users that you want to have access to? And you have a question for that. And then what's the permission? And so, and actually with one of the recent releases, there's a repeatable set of questions. So you can actually have, like you can have the ability to add an item, and then it's, let's say, person. So you type in the person name, the next item would be permission, and it would be grant new permission. So from there, you're really able to do it from a single service without having to go through and come up with a bundle for that. You're able to, make it very usable.
I agree. I think the dependent like services are pretty cool as well. You know,
Yeah.
if you haven't seen that particular feature, it's been out for a while. It just sort of guides the user, you know, kind of transparently into completing whatever they need to complete, so that so I can get fulfilled. Really, yeah. I see another question in there, Sam, from Mohammed. Do you see that, Hugh?
Yeah.
He's a
Yeah.
novice.
So, one of the things that I would say, like as you're if you're new to the process designer, one of the things that's probably the most helpful, and even people that have used it fairly regularly, the most helpful thing that I find is the process logs. Especially if they can get a little challenging if you're working on a production environment where there's a large number of things going on. But if you're in a development environment, they're really great for, you execute a process, and it will tell you every step that's going on in the process, how it's actually executing, and then what the sort of, if it hits an exclusive gateway, what does it, what step does it do? And then, it goes from here, and it's like, oh, it hits an error. Because one of the challenges with the process engine is it's purely transactional. So if it hits an error message, what happens is it will basically roll back the entire transaction, and from the process view, you'll lose that sort of rich information. Whereas if you're looking at the process logs, you can actually see still step by step what's happened. So it gives you a really good way of learning what it's doing and going and understanding it. The other thing I would say too is that one of the things that we're currently working on a best practices for kind of catalog and workflow development. And one of the things that we're really kind of trying to push out as an idea is to have, like one sort of, very generic workflow that does, something similar to what the one that I did in the blog post I shared, where you come up with the one workflow and it can be reused for probably 90 to 95% of your scenarios. Like basically, what are the things you're really doing mostly? Creating a work order, creating an incident, potentially creating a change request. But then it becomes a lot easier for you to, you have that workflow, you understand it, you know what it does, and as opposed to every time you're creating a new service, you create a new workflow. And then, if you need to change all those workflows, you've got to go through and go through each one of them and change them. So it gives you a really concise way of designing it. So you can actually reuse things really well, without having to, redo a lot of work and every time kind of reinvent the wheel every time. And I think it kind of, you have to very much go through and say, okay, well, what, you've got your service. So does this service, you're coming up with a new service and you say, okay, well, does this service fit within the generic workflow? Or do I have to go through, and create, is it creating Active Directory? Is it doing things that is outside of that sort of generic workflow, or can it work, come in that sort of standard flow? So that's one thing that would really be useful in that scenario, I would say, as a sort of best practice.
I think just to add to that as well, what I found particularly useful is the error boundaries in events. So they're workflow actions which you can use to capture particular errors, so that you can reroute your workflow so it's not going to completely fail, right? It'll go off in a different direction, and you can potentially resubmit that workflow as well.
Yeah.
So that's another useful
feature. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hi, Mohammed. Yes.
Hi, thank you guys, thank you everyone. It looks like you all sat in the same spot, but you're not.
Hugh, you mentioned something right at the beginning, and I didn't capture. You said what you would use to the first thing. Was it wallets or something? I didn't capture what you said at the beginning. What you would recommend.
I believe it would be a sort of a generic workflow.
No, prior to that, I got the generic workflow, but you mentioned something right at the beginning of your answer.
Process logging was.
Oh,
that
process
what it was?
logging.
Yeah.
Well, it will be basically where it tells you what each, like an exclusive gateway is doing. Where would you find?
So, which version are you on?
20 point something. You're asking me.
2002.
Yeah.
So you would go into Remedy, and there's the AR system admin console.
Yeah.
And then the logging configuration, and then one of the last options you should have is process logging.
Okay, and just to follow on my question, in the process workflow, there's a lot of options and a lot of things you can do that it has. I wanted to, because even on some of the courses, you don't go through everything that's available, that's in there. So I wanted to go and kind of see what's available, as in there's process flows in there that I can potentially use that I haven't come across, but it might be a good solution to a problem that I might have, but I don't know it exists in process flow, if you know what I mean. I'm hoping I'm trying to make sense of it.
Process logging is there's an awful lot of information in there.
John, he's talking about kind of
utilizing what's in there, trying to because if you know what I mean, instead of trying to I've got a problem, and then say, well, how can I fix it? But I don't know what's under the bonnet of the processor because I haven't kind of gone and explored in that way.
And I mean, it is, I agree, it's a little bit of a challenging proposition, I would say, because like you say, there's a lot of activities on the palette that you can choose from. The best thing that I think you can do is look at the documentation, look at the various connectors and all that sort of thing, see what they can, see what those capabilities are, and then I think the other piece that's kind of a little bit hidden is there's a bunch of string utilities that you can use. So that's another piece where it's like, okay, well, I've got this string, how do I move forward with that? I think that's something that is definitely there. I would say that
somebody be able to share those where they are. Is there one in the doc somewhere? Is there one that really defines the process palette somewhere, or the process designer? No, is there a documentation?
There isn't something that says like exclusively here is each individual item on the palette. The best thing that you can do is you can look at I'll reply to your question with the link to it. But there's a lot of the connector documentation that would probably be relevant for you, kind of where I think you want to look at, and then kind of that would be your best bet, I think.
We'll send it out, Mohammed. I normally, after these sessions, whether they're a webinar or an Ask the Experts, we gather all the questions from today, we listen back to the recording, and we'll make sure we include links as a team. So I'll be sending that out post-event.
Thank you.
No problem.
And
any other questions?
I recognise some of those names that Garvey about. I've seen some of your BMC responses. I won't tell you who I work for, but thank you guys.
Great, thank you. If you don't have any other questions, we'll go back down to the Q&A if that's okay. Okay, so Hugh, if we have a look at the ones that are open still, and then I'll go to the answered ones after, because I think they're all beneficial for the customers if
Yeah,
we
I just,
read them back.
I'm just looking at, let me see. Harishi, you answered a question. Do you want to look at that one?
You're on mute.
So, yeah. So this is
This was
about the
Ellie's.
notifications, right?
Yeah, Ellie's question. I think Ellie's on, actually.
So yeah,
Yes,
so right.
I'm in.
Hello.
Ellie,
Hi everyone.
thanks for the question. So right now we do have those features not available, but it is there are enhancements happening around it, and right now cannot share the more details on it. However, the use case that you just mentioned, where you wanted to have the question responses also available as part of the email notification, I think that's not really planned. So I would suggest to create a community's idea for this, so that it's something that's in our radar and can be planned. So yeah, anything else in particular, like say what right now it's mostly for approvals is what I see. But yeah, you can go ahead if you want to add more to that.
Yeah, I think like the just for the notification part, actually we have got us many like our customer comments that, because it's just like very general for now, because when they raise the request on DWP, and then it just get the general notification saying that's the request is order, and there is no specific like note for them, like what is this case about. So let's say like the details, what I mentioned is one of the question answer. It's just an example, but then possibly we can do other things that we can configure how the notification should look like based on the like customer feedback.
So one other thing, right? So I have heard this from other customers as well, and one of the things that we have suggested in past is to use the notification feature of Remedy. And what they have done in that case is basically disable the DWP notification if you feel that is limiting, and enable Remedy notification. You can,
yeah,
which is
we
much
tried
more.
it. Yeah, we tried this as well, but then like because the Remedy notification, they got the link at the bottom saying that it's direct to the Remedy link, but the user doesn't have the access. It sometimes confuses them, because the DWPA link, actually they can view the details and then access the DWP My Activities, which is better.
Right. So that is a way to generate the DWP link, and you can embed in the email itself. So
okay.
Yeah, I can let me see if I can find that detail, and I can share it with you.
Yes, please.
Yeah, so yeah, definitely I'll have it in my, I just need to look up and find out, but I'll share that information with you.
Okay, yeah, that would be a great help, because like we look at the possibility to use the Remedy notification as well, like the Smart IT one we are currently using. So actually, I think the Smart IT one is much better, because we can configure like the content on the Smart IT notification.
Sure. Yeah. Let me give you the way to generate that link for DWP.
Yes, sure. Thank you. I actually like asked another questions like previously about like for the approval information, because I think John has answered my questions, and I can potentially use the catalog profile workflow to do this, but I'm not sure. Is there any information about this?
So with workflow, you can, using the relevant action, you can extract information from something that's already been created. In your case, you're looking for the approver, so you simply have to get that information mapped back into the service request. You can do that by inserting it as a comment, like an external activity, which will show up as a comment in the request. The other way you can do it is you can actually append it to the service request name dynamically. So that's another option. You use another workflow action, and you would simply put in the approver name appended like to that workflow action, and it would change as it's happening within the workflow.
Okay, is there any like information about like how I can do this?
So if you look at the doc link, where the workflow actions are, there's one on create external activity. That's the first one, and then the other one is changing the name. And so you could use it depending on what you want to do. You could either use either or. But you would ultimately have to obviously get that approver name first, right? From the application, and then once you have that information, it's really easy to send it back.
Yeah, what we have currently doing is like we configure like the workflow from DWP, and then we insert like the approval process within like the request. And once the approval process has been gone through and it is approved by the approver, the ticket will be created. But we have the issue right now is like when the ticket is created, a support group, because they don't have access to DWP at DWPC, so they can't see who approved it, and they didn't know that if it is approved or not. So they just based on the experience say that, oh, it's actually approved when the ticket is created. But we really want to have the support team to have the visibility to see who approved it.
Yeah, like I said, like it's really a matter of like finding, first of all, once that approval is done, finding out obviously who that person is, and once you extract that information, then you can pass it back very easily, like using workflow, and to do that you could either append it to the actual like service request name, or you could add it in as a comment. So you would say, so for example, you say, hey, Mary is just after approving this change request or whatever, it would literally show up in DWP. So it's a little, there's a few things that are involved depending on what you want to do, but like I said earlier, it's workflow is really, really flexible. If you have the information and it's there within that whole overall process, then you can pretty much do whatever you want and send it back. In your case, you just want to send it back to the end user to let them know who it is. So they're the two probably best like ways of doing it, to my knowledge. Unless there's something else that you'd like to add, either. But,
yeah, no, I think that's a great summary.
You do.
Like I think it's the remedy connector allows you to create, read, update, delete any piece of data that you want in remedy. So you're able to, I think the biggest challenge likely is where does that data sit, and how do you relate that to your existing approval, service request, etc. Like that's, I think, the biggest potential challenge. But it's all that stuff is there. There's and further to your comment, John, there's a create activity log activity.
Yeah, that's the one.
That's the one I think you were talking about, where you can it'll create the comment on the service request, and then any incident, work order, or anything like that that's related to that service request will get that comment pushed to it. So I think that's the perfect way of doing it, I think. But I would say that the challenge is just how do you get the data that you need, I think. So
Yep, great. I will see on this, because I check like this is
I think
now.
It'll take a little bit of work, but as I was saying earlier, it all comes down to really understanding how it would work on its own, right? The back end, like what forms are involved, like what fields are involved, and once that submit, that create entry happens, like how do I get that information out? And there's a couple of ways to do it. Get entry by query, get entries by query, get entry. And then obviously, there's a ton of information within whatever you extract. So then it's a case of taking out only what you need, and then at that point, sending it back to Digital Workplace, right? So it's trial and error. I find a lot of these things, you really have to sit down and experiment before you eventually figure out what you need to do.
And
so
the
hopefully
one
that
thing I would
helps, you know.
say, sorry, and the one thing I would say
Yeah, no
too
worries.
is you know, using the, sometimes it's really tough to say, okay, well, you know, you're looking at a screen and you're like, okay, well, where is this piece of information sitting? One thing that's really helpful can be the API SQL logs, because that will also tell you, okay, well, you're getting inserted into this table and that sort of thing. So that can be something that can be a really good tool, like being able to use that and understand, okay, this is where things are getting put into, then I can, you know, kind of go from there. So that's another piece that I can recommend using as
You know, I'm gonna try sharing on my screen one more time. If this doesn't work,
uh-oh.
if this doesn't work, I'm gonna give up. All right. So is it working? Can you see my screen?
Yes, it is. Wow.
Yes.
Yay! Hooray! Can you believe it? All right. Brand new Mac users. What can I say? All right. So there's a
Ask the
ton.
experts on that.
Yeah, well, you're the expert. So like Hugh was saying, like there's like a ton of workflow actions here, right? So these are really the tools like that you have available to you, right? So it's a question obviously of finding exactly like, you know, which ones to use, right? And in terms of remedy, obviously these are all the main actions, but this is a brand new blog, by the way, that I sort of the subject of a brand new blog that I published. I'm not trying to plug myself in any way or promote myself, but I thought it was a good idea to try and just to explain what I was talking about. It's not necessarily your use case, but I think it may give you, hopefully it may give you an idea of what you could potentially do. So how do I move this thing over? All right, so here, right, so basically this workflow is designed with the main purpose really was to simply give users the ability to attach like multiple like configuration items to a change request in the little like relationships tab of a change request, right? And that's not something that you can do like out of the box. Like we have our create actions, like to create a work order, like work order change or whatever, right? And that's as far as it goes, right? So then you really need to think, as I said, how does it actually work, like on, you know, within Remedy itself, directly within Remedy? And so the first approach is to simply create an entry or to create a relationship directly within a change request, right? And as Hugh was saying earlier, easiest way to figure out what's going on in the background is to enable like logging. And in my case, I enabled like server-side filter logging, and some active link logging was helpful too. And then once I created the relationship within the change request and I clicked save, then I was simply able to identify like the forms that are involved. So that was the first step. So okay, right, well, how do I first get the CI? And so obviously the AST base element form is the main form that holds that information. And so once I extract the user basically extracts the CI from that form, then it's a question of getting the right class like ID. How do I get the right class ID? Well, you can use the get entry by query action, right? Which is really like, it's almost like an advanced Remedy search qualification for those of you who are familiar with Remedy. And so what it's saying is, get me the class ID that is equal to the output of this, and then only get me that information and nothing else. And then what I'll do then is I'll build up my field names and the values that I'm ultimately going to be mapping to those field names. And so what I do is I would simply go to Developer Studio in this case, right? And the end form that I'm going to use to create that relationship happens to be this form, right? That I would have picked up from the filter logging. And so once I know all of my required fields, right? Once I know all my required fields, then I'm simply going to insert all that information into the CSG associations form. That ultimately forms a relationship, right? But along the way, you know, I can use, like, you know, in your case, you wanted to get the approver I could potentially use this action, right, to search like an approval form based on, you know, the person who was maybe submitting the request and getting that information, then using that information to ultimately extract the end user and pass it back to the request. All right, so that's just a sort of a kind of a simple like overview of the possibilities, you know, in one use case that you can use in DWP. Yeah. So hopefully that helps.
Yes, that helps. That's very clear. Then I will just try it myself, like to see some of the. Yeah, I just if you don't mind, can I like capture this screen? And I just
yeah, no problem. I actually created.
Oh, okay.
I'm glad you asked because I created the blog yesterday and I just published it. That's sort of like why it's kind of it's on communities like
Okay.
I shared it through
Want to
LinkedIn.
share that link?
Yeah. I'll have to do. I'll dig it out and I'll put it
Sure,
into the chat.
I'll get it.
Yeah. Okay.
And post event, Ellie, we will be sharing out this recording so you can watch this back as well.
All right.
I think, and this is what I was thinking of, right? For you know, getting the information back to DWP. Let me just. I gotta get rid of this silly bar here. So what you can do is you can use this action, for example, right? Let's say you wanted to dynamically, you know, add the user's name to the title of the request as soon as like it's approved. Then you could just simply drag in this action after, you know, the point, and then put in the request ID, and then just put in the summary here, and then it'll completely change the name of the request to, or it'll append the end user's name to the summary of the original request. And then the other one was what was the other one called again? Hugh, was track external, add external. Yeah, this one. Okay, so this one, or is it? Yeah, it's this one.
No.
All right,
I've never used that one.
Not that one. What was
Add
it called?
activity log. Create activity log.
Activity log. Yeah, that's the one. Yeah. So create activity log. Yeah, this one.
Yeah, I just quickly try this activity log, but then like this one is like creating the comments in the DWP, but it's not passing to the ticket.
It should pass it to, so it'll pass it to it'll pass to the request as a comment in DWP.
Yeah, the request is a comment, but then like in the ticket that I created, the back of this is the ITSM work order ticket is not seeing this comment. So,
no, that's not the intention. Like it was my understanding that that you wanted to pass the information back as a comment, right? In request.
Comments to the work order, so to the tickets that we created at the back of this.
So any comment that you add to a request in DWP will be automatically sent, or should be automatically sent to, you know, the relevant ticket. You know?
Yeah, I think so, but then like I just tried, I quickly tried to create activities log, but it seems like it's not passing. Possibly I did something wrong, but I can try it again.
Yeah, no, it should like I said, like provided you have the correct request ID and you know the custom text can be anything you want, then it should ultimately like pass that information back to the service request as a comment.
What you might want to do, what you can maybe do is just create a communities post on what you're trying to do, and then we can work with you to kind of get it right.
Great idea. So I will do this after this call.
Can you, Ellie, can you do it in the DWP space as well? Although we've got the announcement post and I tag it into there, it'd be good to have it into the product page.
Yep. What is the page like link?
When you go into communities, because I know I showed you how to go through communities. If you go under the product at the top, you'll have a drop down and it'll give you digital workplace. If you click on there, you can create a question or comments on there directly into the page. If you've got any problems, let me know. But it'd be good to capture it in the right place rather than on this announcement post for this event.
Okay, no
Ping
problem.
me if you've got any problems.
Sure, thanks.
Thank you. I am conscious we're running out of time. I know everyone was quite conscious. We wasn't sure if we were going to get lots of questions, but I was hoping that we could go into some of the questions that are answered. But because we've still got some open questions, I'd like to go through those. And obviously, to the team and also everyone that's joined today, if there are other things that come up from today that we feel there's more webinar content or another session required, then we will continue to do these type of sessions. So if you haven't had your question answered or there's things that you're considering that might be useful, please reach out to us directly or myself, and then I'll work with the team. So Hugh, just back on to the open questions. We've got, I think, is it a few more? There's one actually down from Mario. I think the others were just questions and responses. So there's a question from Mario. I don't know if we can go to that question and see
that's
if either
actually
yourself or the team.
that's actually a comment on the other.
Okay.
He's saying that, yeah, you can use the SB service request stub and AP detail signatures to get the approval details. So that would actually be relevant for Ellie's comment.
Okay, great. I'll get you to piece all this together after. And then there's one from Vinod. Before then, just his the question there about looking at functionality. I don't know if you've seen that one.
Yeah.
So I think here's the thing, right? It's right now there is a workaround where you can prevent the user from submitting a request based on some backend validations or actions. However, I do not think we can show them a message saying that they won't be able to submit. So again, this is based on my assumption that the use cases wherein they select some options and those options are not valid and not submittable. Right, Vinod? Is that right direction? Means that's the use case that you're trying to solve?
Yes, Rishi. So the requirement was something like, let's say, if I'm going to answer a question, and if that answer is not supposed to be like given by the end user, then in that case, what we would like to do is we would like to show an error message stating that the choice selection is not matching the expectation, and you cannot proceed with the request submission.
You could potentially use like an error boundary in events here as well, depending on the situation, and then send so it'd be looking for specific like error or something, right? And then potentially send that back as a comment, in Digital Workplace. That could be one potential way to do it.
Unfortunately, the thing was like all those things, what we can do is after request submission. So that was unnecessarily creating what I can say false requests. But anyways, I was just looking for the recommendations. Thank you.
I think post this question community, I think let's discuss it further out there.
Yeah. This functionality, Rishi, I think like we faced this challenge for more than one customer. So I thought of discussing this with you. So maybe I'll create a post and we'll look you guys.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Just giving you the link actually, and so Ellie's got it as well. I'm just replying back to say Harishi's recommended you post this. Okay. Just checking if we've got any others, Hugh, because we're obviously almost on the hour. I think that looks all the questions that we've got. I guess if we open it up to the floor as well, is there any questions that needed more attention that we've already answered? So those that have already asked the questions, and sorry, haven't got round to sharing them, but we will share them out in a blog post event. Does anyone else have any questions before we wrap up? If you can unmute yourself if you've got any questions. I think I can see a hand raised. So
yeah, hi.
Ganmorthi, can you hear us? Hello.
Hi, Samantha.
Hello.
Hello. Yes. Yeah, my question is like, currently in DWP, right? I mean, if someone is, submitting the comments, right? So it is not editable, right? So is there any way that we can use the API or any other way to update the comments in the DWP?
You mean like to edit a comment after it's been added, like to a request?
Updating the work log basically. Not the smart IT level, I wanted to update the work log in the self-service portal. Basically, suppose if you are adding something like if you are adding the command ABC, later point if you wanted to edit the command as XYZ.
Oh, if you want to change it,
right?
no, not that I'm aware of. Like, so if you make a mistake or something and you want to change it, it's already committed, right? So I think it'd be tricky to do it without going into some back-end forms and maybe manipulating it there. But for the end user to do it, the end user to do it, that functionality isn't there.
No.
Yeah.
No, not for the end user. I'm okay to update it in the API as well, but I want to know the exact form because I tried with some form, but it is not working. I mean, may I know the form name, which form we need to update it?
I don't know off the top of my head. Rishi, is that something you might know? The form, like the back-end form or database table where the comments go to? Because that's not typically something you would really do, right? To basically change something that's already been added.
Right. I think you can find the comments or activity log. It would be activity log if it is a SRM related one, and even in catalog. But is this something that the end user wants to change, or the admin would be doing that? So
no, not end user. No, not end user. Actually, what I wanted to change is like I have a third-party system. Yeah, I have a third-party system. So if some work log is changes over there, I just wanted to change it in the DWP comment section. I mean, it is not for the end user. It is more connected to through the APIs. I mean, the backend. That's what I just wanted to know where I have to change it.
So I think Vaibhav just posted those forms. So it would most probably going into one of those forms. It's like my TSP content definition and then my TSP activity log. And you can take a look at those and you should find the comments there. Thank you, Vaibhav, for that.
Okay.
Can you see them?
And one more thing, I heard some customer actually, they wanted to prevent the submission. Yeah, they wanted to prevent the submission, right? I tried with one trick actually, but that works. I think I posted in the community as well. If you want, you can check it.
Yeah, if you can share the link, that would be amazing.
Yeah, I think currently I don't have the link, but yeah,
that's okay.
Try to get the I'll be if possible I will be make a document, but there is a trick. I mean, there is no what do you call it,
direct
option as
workaround.
I think 22.1 we have the external validation, but that is also for limited functionality, but this can be done with with the help of the AI system, with a small customization actually. So that can be done with a small trick actually. So I did it for my one of my requirement. So just wanted to give an update.
Yeah,
that's it. Yeah. But it is there in the community. I mean,
okay, then I'll be searching the community for sure.
Yeah.
Thanks, Gana.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think that's all our questions, team. The other one was just some links and helpful docs. So everything that's been discussed today we'll capture and put into a blog post, which will go onto the DWP community. We will be sending out the recording once I've done a bit of editing. And if anybody has other topics or interest, even post this event, please, as we've recommended, put your questions into the community and our team will answer. Without further ado, I just want to say thank you to our team. We never know what questions are going to come up, and thank you to the customers that have been very interactive and asking questions. And do use this as an opportunity in future if we have any other sessions like this to reach out or give us some questions prior to the event, and we'll do our best to get those answered. And again, I'm always interested in any topics that we may not have covered to do webinars. So thank you, and thank you to the team, and Have a good rest of the day, everyone.
One other comment is, if you guys didn't get things answered properly, just start a communities post, and we can address things from there. That'd be a great way to kind of wrap things up if you didn't get it accurately or adequately responded to.
Thanks, Hugh. Okay, thank you, everyone. Have a good rest of the day.
Thank you.